wasting my life, and the wasting is through. You had me under your finger, but time is a flying, so I quit my crying. You used to rule me, I won't let you fool me, 'cause I'm finally knowing there's nothing I'm owing to you. You got those icy fingers creeping up and down my spine with your lying whispers. You do your best to mess with my mind, but now I'm tired of hiding behind your threatening veil. 'Cause I'm bound for glory. You say I'll never make it, but I know I will. I will. You got those icy fingers creeping up and down my spine with your lying whispers. You do your best to mess with my mind, but now I'm tired of hiding behind your threatening veil. 'Cause I'm bound for glory. You say I'll never make it, but I know I will. Got to get on with it. I don't have long, and there's so much to do. The show must go on. I'm gonna make it. No hesitating, and no time for waiting. You used to rule me, now I won't let you fool me. 'Cause I'm finally knowing there's nothing I'm owing to you.
Hey guys, welcome. Yet again, the light of revelation shines on my face through the lights in the renovated barn here at Dream Farm. So I'm playing with that and hanging out with you guys. Wow. Thanks so much for sharing and inviting others. You know, when we don't get our 10,000 view numbers, which have always delighted me, I know that actually I can talk a little bit more personally to those of you who come in, and I can kind of open up my heart a bit more. And so you just never know what might happen in our universe today, because we are all about learning the life skill of fear-free living. Fear-free living is not just an option. It's a life skill. It has to be learned. The things that really separate mature people from babies and milk from meat is actually attaining the life skill of what you have to know how to do and you employ in order to fully fill out the shape and scope of the life that God has imagined for you and for me. And so I like to take the mystery out of how you deal with pain, how you deal with fear, how you deal with anxiety, how you deal with conflict, how you deal with confrontation, how you deal with procrastination, how you deal with self-sabotage and defeat. Because these are all just modern day words for probably a lot of biblical concepts that God thought of first and told us how to deal with first. So here we are in the midst of an awesome week, and it's just now starting to get fun. Those of us who have deep connections with alternative news sources and, oh my gosh, an alternative perspective from heaven about what's happening, we didn't really move off the mark too much. I think normally what happens in a situation where, and by the way, Wonder Warrior, love your morning prayer thing and Salt and Light Unite and the whole tribe, and the way you're just keeping us consistent. Larry and Pepper and Lisa and Greg and all you guys are just consistently just kind of putting one foot in front of the other and keeping us fixed and focused with what our responsibilities are in a time like this, right? So for me, it has meant going back to writing and finishing a project that is a series of 5 books that are going to predate the fabulous Folsom family in this first book, Mrs. Amazing and the Seed. And so I have just gone through a deep dive of investigating intelligent design, fine-tuning in the universe, the thought that there might be geniosity behind it all, investigating how the Big Bang fits with the Torah, all kinds of things, and then trying to weave it into a story that is not going to be heavy-handed or preachy, but is going to speak to kids and families or whatever. And when there's a lot of flutter in the mind, right? Thanks, Wonder Warrior. How did they like it, by the way? Did they read it themselves? Was it read to them? Let me know what they thought of it. One of the things that's hard about being an artist or a musician, I guess anybody who puts it out there, is you wear your heart on your sleeve. You create a work, and then you hope that you'll hear back from people how it's gone. I vote that is awesome. Cool. But sometimes you don't, because obviously we're all in our own universes, and we don't always tell the people whose work has ministered to us what it's meant. And that's why I really try to be super intentional with people in my life to let them know what I think and how I value them and what I see in them, even if I struggle with, Mom did, you loved it? Oh, yay, cool. Well, my new books are way better. Can you imagine that? Because I got to work with pro editors and learn the things I just simply didn't know how to do. That's a little bit of rambling to get us on point to say that here we are, and it's just starting to get fun. We've just been in through the middle of a massive psychological operation. Most of what we've experienced in 2020 has been a psyop attempting to create a lot of social control, a lot of control over our thinking, our emotions, our patterns, our behavior, our clothing, our ability to stick our necks out. And so we just hit a pinnacle of absolute control and censorship to the point where you have to be really proactive to find the information that you need that will keep you balanced and grounded related to verifiable fact and truth. This is what we're doing in terms of a media focus, where many of us have learned who is trustworthy and who's not trustworthy, who we thought was trustworthy and who isn't. And now we've become very intentional about how we're getting our news sources and where we're aggregating information from and what prophetic voices we're listening to. This is the kind of thing. Hey, Larry, I was just thanking everybody and you for your morning devos, by the way, Larry Norris. And, I just need to tell you, I don't get to see the chat on Facebook. My Restream account doesn't allow me to see what's happening on Facebook to talk back with you. We don't have a huge audience on Facebook. We get a lot out on the interwebs, and it's not reflected in the Facebook numbers. But in any event, I'm glad you're there, and I usually go back and try to do a little hello to the Facebook people who watched. But we have had to become a very intentional people. What do I teach you? What is one of the number one things we talk about here? How passivity is your enemy. Passivity in any form is an enemy of the kingdom of God, really. Passivity is not the same thing as rest. Passivity is not the same thing as keeping your powder dry or waiting on God or observing and thinking, planning how to move forward and how you're going to influence and how that's going to work. Passivity is an acquiescence to procrastination and avoidance. Hey, guess what? That's, where'd he go? There he is. Ladybug. Hello. Glad you came into my scope today. There you go. And so we have become passive consumers of so much information. And this is where the brainwashing and the mind control and the propaganda enters into us, right? And we become passive consumers of what was already wired into us. And here is the place where we get to step up and say, I am no longer a passive consumer of just about anything anymore. I have my moments. Last night, I was practically sleepwalking when I ate the other half of the bag of hint of lime Tostitos. It's like I wasn't even in my body. I just had an urge. Something took over. But generally speaking, I'm not a passive consumer of anything. And this becomes one of the skills that we take up as fear-free liver learners, and how we learn the life of skill of what we do. It's interesting, I had a conversation with one of my editors today, and I was asking for her advice, and she was telling me that she thought one of my characters needed to learn, really needed to forgive the bad guy. In essence, she was suggesting to me that really in the end, my character was going to have to step up to the plate and forgive this evil, bad guy, girl, person in the thing. And I was like, ultimately that's true, but we're going to weave that through a larger process. And the evil Ms. Beasley does have a redemption arc in this book, which is set later in the series. I kind of backdate now. The 5 that I'm working on are predating this book. And so she was telling me about forgiveness, and she said, it's just something that, I'm really struggling with. And I said to her, well, it's a life skill. And we began a conversation, and she said, well, what really works is if you take a glass of water and you hold it out with your arm and for a long time, and you put your anger in the water and you say, this is my anger. And you just hold it out long enough until your arm gets really tired, and then you realize you don't want to be angry anymore because you just don't want to carry it around. And I said to her, that is a very interesting assessment, and I'm sure it's motivational to help you see. I'd be like, can I just drink it? Because I'm really thirsty right now. I don't need this. I actually need some water in them right now. And I said, but that is a little bit different than the actual transaction that forgiveness is, the intentional choice that makes the difference. And this is why I try to communicate to you that the things that are such mysteries to us, the things that seems to be such soft skills, you've heard this idea of soft skills. These are the things where people have a way of oozing around others, kind of the lubrication of relational kindness and graciousness and encouragement that makes it easier for people to interact, the cogs of lives to come together. That's kind of, I guess that's the meaning of the idea of soft skills, the ability to discern what's happening in another person, to read body language, and the ability to, quote unquote, let it go, and all these things. Well, you know what, if you really, really peel back behind a soft skill, you're going to find a very specific, what I'm going to call more meaty skill, more hard skill. The hard skill of the how you do it, of the steps and the means by which you do it. And it's interesting because if you do a study of Jewish prayer, there's a lot of legality in Jewish literature. There's a lot of protocol in Jewish literature from which we get some of the protocols of our Western liturgies, Catholic Church and so forth. There's a protocol in Jewish literature for how we're entering the presence of God and what we do, and these are the things. And I'm going to guess that if we really search in Scripture, we're going to discover a lot of protocols, the protocols of the soul, the protocols and the skills that are a little bit more concrete than the just let it go, just meditate, just these generalized ideas. So we talk about that there. So we can learn the how-tos of how we take care of business as kingdom people, to actually choose to forgive, to actually choose to give possession of my pain to God and receive possession of what He's given to me and what replaces my pain. These are the things we work around, and these are the things that we're coming together and working on together here in Fear-Free Living. And, you know, everybody and their mother, at least in this tribe, has been talking for a week about the election and how surprised we were that what we know is coming, which is Donald Trump's second term and the draining of the swamp and justice and all these things. It just did not come in the package that we thought it would. And so we really had a reorientation and a realignment. We had to just kind of grab ourselves and go, look at here. You know, I don't get to necessarily control how it looks. All I know is what the big plan is for God. And of course, this becomes another life skill, the life skill of pivoting into the reality that some of your greatest blessings don't always look like blessings in the beginning. And my father used to say, this is where he talked a lot. He was a teacher and a pastor. He talked a lot about learning to see what God's giving you and seeing a blessing when it really doesn't feel like a blessing. And to see that his way of pulling things out and weighing them out is so much better than ours, correct? And so this is the process we've been engaged in. And once you get your reorientation done, it actually starts to get a little bit fun. You actually begin to start to see things you didn't see. And this is the beauty of what's called the reticular activating system, which is, I believe, here at the base of the brain. And this is the part of your body that gets to decide what you're going to pay attention to. Oh my gosh, did I show you the, I showed you, come here, the ladybug. Well, look at this guy. What do you think of this? What do you think of him? I've got neighbors today. All right, anyway, off with you. And the reticular activating system is the part of the brain that works along with the functions that you smell perfume at first, but you don't smell it after a while. Why? Because if all of the things you had to be aware of all the time, you were consistently aware of what would happen, you'd be completely amped, overstimulated by too many data points of information and sight, smell, sound, touch. And when you have pain and when you have unresolved issues in your heart, in your body, and in your wiring, that's going to affect what you see, what you pay attention to. So as we get healed and whole, and our brains rewire for the truth, and God literally physically touches our body and drains the pain out of our memories, we now have the capacity, and He can begin to redirect our reticular activating systems to go, wow, look at that. And this is, yesterday we talked about confirmation bias and why and how you choose how you can choose your confirmation bias. And a confirmation bias that is getting more and more healed and whole, that is more and more affected by our choices of how we live and how we use the skill of living free, then begins to work with that other part of the brain, the reticular activating system, and begin to help us find things that actually confirm and reconfirm. So, you know, once you get healed of a lot of stuff relating to the who you are and why you are the way you are, and your disappointment with yourself and your disappointment with God, you get this confirmation bias, like, I'm kind of cool. You can really like yourself. And why is that important in a fear-free life? Because you're the one you spend the most time with. Obviously, God in you, Christ in you. If you hate yourself, the very temple that Jesus has decided He's living in and He's investing in, that creates a lot of inner confusion and conflict. Here's Jesus in you, trying to love and appreciate and enjoy the creation that is you. And here we are with so much self-hatred, fear, and anxiety. When that begins to get healed, you have this beautiful confirmation bias. And I told you yesterday that mine is basically kind of made up of several things. I am loved at all times and 100% unconditionally. I'm forgiven. And one of my aspects of it was, I can't lose. And that's what informs and speaks to my reticular activating system. And I keep looking for the ways in which to win. How's the winning going to happen today? This is what our president is teaching us. And this is why we need people like him. Because, what do I say? We've been taught over many decades to lose, to think like losers, to be afraid of losing, to see every situation that isn't like what we thought it would be, to be a confirmation of that losing bias. But when that changes, it starts to get fun. Like in the song I played for you at the beginning, Mr. Fear. I got to get on with it. I've got so much to do. And you've got those icy fingers creeping up and down my spine. Your lion whispers. they do so much to mess with my mind. But now I'm tired of hiding behind your threatening veil because I'm bound for glory. You say I'll never make it, but I know I will. Got to get on with it. I have so much to do, and I don't have time for you. This is the fear-free life skill. And one of the things that gets really fun, is when you find yourself getting free in an area, especially a personal responsibility area, where you've really been avoiding. It might be as simple as your shoe closet, your laundry, taking out the garbage, folding some things and putting them away. Believe it or not, the physicality of bringing order to your universe and not avoiding simple tasks creates so much pleasure in the brain. Did you know that you're not wired for pain? You're not wired for fear. You're wired to save energy. You're wired for your body to take care of you, and you're actually wired for pleasure. God wired you for pleasure, hardwired you for pleasure. And I think that as we learn His love, we learn to be pleased and to find pleasure in the things around us. So this week, as we shifted our focus from the losing mentality into the what is possible mentality, what's possible? It turns into a fun game of what could it be? One of the things the Lord taught me when I was a young mom, and I would rely on babysitters and stuff, was that, sometimes you're planning a whole day and you've got the kids just all sorted and you're waiting for the babysitter to walk in the house and so you can go on and do your thing. And very often you get the phone call or remember the old-fashioned message machines? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Ledoux, I can't come today. I've got the mumps and I'm not coming, or I got a thing at school or whatever. And I found that instead of shifting into, oh, well, that, my whole day is just blown up, the Holy Spirit began to teach me what is possible. What is possible? What have I realigned in your life? Why have I sent you this way? Or what could it be possible that 15-minute delay on the freeway kept you from an accident, or meant that you were going to see this person exactly then or there, or you were going to notice something? And of course, many of you people in our tribes are very mature, and so these are not new ideas to you. But what I'm saying is, when we move from the assumption we've lost, that it's all awful, and we move into the no, I'm not moving off the mark of what God says, of my confirmation bias based on the Word of God, based on solid prophetic utterance, based on what God is speaking to me personally, as well as the relationships around me, based on my best aggregation of the smartest and sharpest people I know who dare to ask questions and think outside of a larger propaganda structure, right? And once that is built in us more and more and more and more, we start to get a freedom or and which creates a responsibility for more freedom in other areas. And when things go off kilter, it doesn't take long for the fear-free liver learner to switch to what might be possible. And it gets kind of fun. What might be possible after a crucifixion? What might be possible after a major disappointment? What might be possible after a terrible diagnosis? What might be possible after you really disappoint me? What might be possible? And it's fun, because once you get free in an area of your life, you will begin to ask the very threatening question that people who want to control us, that the enemy doesn't want to ask, that society does not want to ask, is this one. If I believed a lie about that, and it kept me for so many years from the pleasure of accomplishing this, what is possible next? And this is where we head in fear-free living. When God begins to heal those deeper wounds about who you are and where you were disappointed before and what you believed about that and how you got beat up and slapped around, and you begin to develop a truly heaven-centered confirmation bias, then you know what? You're going to find the more whole you get, you're going to find more and more and more and more reasons to stick with that particular bias, that rock of truth. You know, when I was in college, there was a very, very smart, sciencey guy that spoke at our church in Toronto, and it was a huge college and career group. And he spoke about intelligent design and creationism. And he shared some information from some intelligent design scientists. And he said, it's not that you don't, everybody has a bias. The question is, what's the best bias to be biased by? There are good biases to have. Like if my bias is love, my bias is grace, my bias is good boundaries, that I'm not a doormat, but I can freely extend kindness to others out of a position of strength. These are the biases that we want to keep. So it's now getting fun. Have you noticed? Since many of us shifted out of the, oh my God, the sky is falling, we've shifted into this what is possible. And now the news is filtering in. The news is filtering in more and more. God has a way of being utterly irrepressible. And now we're seeing that perhaps the thing that we feared the most might be our leverage into a greater level of victory. That's another thing I want to just say to you before I go and I play the song one more time for you guys. Is this, that you have a worst fear lingering somewhere. And one of the things that you'll find as you really get free is that you don't get to avoid looking your worst fears right in the face. The longer you avoid dealing with that worst fear, hearing clearly what it's actually saying to you, looking it right in its ugly eyes, and assessing the reality of what it's saying and what it means, and whether that lines up with what is hopefully developing in you, which is a really healthy confirmation bias, then if you avoid that, you're giving it more territory and more increase, because what is left undealt with becomes an obsessive focus of the unconscious. Did you know that? What we allow and bury actually becomes an obsessive focus of the unconscious mind. We think that by avoiding the taxes, avoiding the confrontation, avoiding the change, avoiding looking the fear in the eye, we dodged a bullet. Because in the moment of conflict, when it comes up, we get the hit of the fight or flight mechanisms in the body when we deal with fear. Then when we avoid, we get a little hit, I forget which chemical it is, but it's the one that makes you feel really good. And when you pull back from a risk, you get a little hit of that relief feeling. Oh, God. Oh, I don't have to take that call, right? But depending on how significant the issues are relating to what you're avoiding, what happens is it goes into and creates greater anxiety. And there's a greater spin in your unconscious, giving it more space in each of us. Okay? So the wisdom says, by the grace of God, I'm going to let Him open this before me, and I'm going to take the chunks that are coming up, and I'm going to deal with this. And it actually decreases the anxiety when you begin to face the things that you're avoiding and what they mean, because it's not just the thing you're avoiding, it's what it means to you. It's what you believe about it. And so when we deal with that, and every time you actually face something that's had a huge whirlwind effect, or even a minimal one, but still there in your unconscious, you actually get to experience not just the hit of relief, but the enjoyment of the pleasure of God, that you got set free, that you dealt with something. Even, my friends, if facing that thing means you had to hear the words you thought you never wanted to hear. I've told you many times about when I finally had to confront the alcoholic in our family, and I heard the words that unconsciously I thought I always feared. That little perfect Julie Lavender was now the focus of evil in the modern world. How dare you? Shame, 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 shame. And I think unconsciously I always feared that if I didn't play by the rules, that that's what the outcome would be. That if you really knew who I was, that you'd find out how bad I was. Well, you know what? I heard those words one day. The very ones I didn't want to hear. And God is so faithful because I had said yes to the process of cleaning out that unconscious and dealing with what was going on in that arena. Many arenas came later. And when I finally looked that ugly thing in the eye, I could say I lived. And what is possible for me now? I overcame that. What's possible for me next? If I believed a lie about that, what's possible next? What else? What other lies am I believing? And it gets fun. Over time, the overcoming mindset is fun. It's happy. It's encouraging. Even if your unconscious swirl is deep and painful, there's a lot of trauma because God has a way out for you. And He knows exactly what you can handle when, what you can bite off when, right? So it's time to have some fun. It's time now that we've moved into the new thing of what's possible for us in a world where our elections are turning out this way and not that way. And what could God be doing now instead of in a different idea of what I thought? And what could be happening now that I actually had to deal with a worse fear? What if he doesn't get declared victor on November 3rd or whatever it is? What if I lose my job? What if so-and-so doesn't like me anymore? What if the truth comes out and people start bullying me on Facebook because of this or that or the other thing? What is possible for me now? I've rambled a bit, but I just want to keep us on the perspective paradigm building train of people who've decided that we have nothing better to do with the rest of our lives than become truly whole and happy and effective and able to love and embrace the world around us and bring them into that beauty and introduce them to the best reason why we have the best confirmation bias in the world, which is the Lord Himself, right? So how about if I just play you the song one more time on the way out the door, and you go think about doing something that scares you, that you've been avoiding. What have you been avoiding this week? Because you're giving it a lot more space than you realize, all right? Let's hear this. This is my tune, Mr. Fear from Good Woman. And by the way, if you go to subscribestar.com, you can sign up for the tier where you and I'll work together privately. And we'll do some mentoring and coaching together privately. I also have other things. I got a discovery survey on there. I'll give you a copy of this tune. How about that? I will give you my very best overcoming tip. I'm looking to creating some mastermind connections with others. So go to subscribestar.com. You can support what we're doing here, but you can also invest in your fear-free living learning. All right? Let's listen to Mr. Fear on the way out the door.
Got to get on with it. I don't have long, and there's so much to do. The show must go on. I gotta make it. No hesitating, and no time for waiting on you. Ain't no more time left to linger. Been wasting my life, and the wasting is through. You had me under your finger, but time is a flying, so I quit my crying. You used to rule me, I won't let you fool me, 'cause I'm finally knowing there's nothing I'm owing. your threatening veil. 'Cause I'm bound for glory. Say I'll never make it, but I know I will. I will. Check out this vibe solo. You got those icy fingers creeping up and down my spine with your lying whispers. You do your best to mess with my mind, but now I'm tired of hiding behind your threatening veil. 'Cause I'm bound for glory. You say I'll never make it, but I know I will. Got to get on with it. I don't have long, and there's so much to do. The show must go on. I'm gonna make it. No hesitating, and no time for waiting. You used to rule me, now I won't let you fool me. 'Cause I'm finally knowing there's nothing I'm owing to you.
All right, guys. That was a song written about fear when I was terrified and I made a decision. I'm not going to live like this. Make a decision that your confirmation bias is going to be increased and daily built based on the Word of God and based on things that will make you happy. Did you know you can choose a happy confirmation bias? I ranted and raved and preached and taught all about this yesterday on my Scope. If you missed it, you can go to my Twitter timeline, Julie_Lavender, and it's there. You can go to julielavender.com and Mentoring Broadcast. I think you can do that. It's on Periscope, okay? If you missed yesterday's broadcast and you want to learn about really developing a confirmation bias, why it's important, why it's foundational to your freedom, you can go back and listen. Check it out. And what do I say? Go do something that scares you. You know what I'm going to do? I'm planning something that's scaring me tomorrow. Something I don't want to do. Something that made me uncomfortable. And for the first time in a long time, I reached out to my husband and I said, honey, can I have your help? Because situations as they are, this is just getting a little wearing for me. But I need to get out and do this thing. Will you join me? You can find people like that to help you. So do something that scares you. Okay, on purpose, just so you can have a little fun on the other side.